doing? What am I looking at? I'll show you how you've never been separated from the ability to see everything in the universe. And if that sounds a bit dramatic, you'll soon see what I really absolutely mean by that. And you will have a profound understanding of some things that you've been wondering about and never really knew how to understand it. Okay, I'll also show you how the law of attraction actually works rather than hoping that it does. Many of us hope in life that it actually works rather than knowing how it works. We've all heard about the law of attraction, but how does it actually work? Well, in this session, I will be showing you exactly how it works, and I'm not talking from a hocus pocus perspective. Okay, so the best part of this session is that you'll discover why you have a double self, okay, and why it's the secret to your success. Okay, you'll see how this secret part of you can help you eliminate fear, procrastination, and the worry about what people think. Now, as an intuitive sensitive, and certainly as a sensitive, you will worry absolutely about what other people think. Maybe it's got a little bit easier as you've been developing your inner world, if you've been developing it, but at the same time, the worry about what other people think sits deep in our system as intuitive and certainly as sensitives, okay? So, in short, here's nothing about me, okay? I'm not going to rabbit on about who I am because you already know who I am, okay? You've heard me yabbering to you before. For you to be on this session, you've certainly heard of me before, and you've heard me talking to you before. So, you liked it then, otherwise you won't be back now. So you'll like it now. And quite honestly, if you haven't yet read my book, then read it, okay? Highly Intuitive People. Why? Because it describes your life journey, okay? And you'll find it helpful. So if you have read it, then give a copy to someone who doesn't get you, okay? And make them read it, and they'll soon get you and probably apologize for any bad behavior if they're a nice person. So this is a picture of what I do. Quite honestly, I read a lot of books, always have done, and maybe you've heard me say that before. I definitely, most certainly like to absorb knowledge and then explain it to you. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, my first degree is in literature, and then literature, history and politics, if I rightly remember what it is. And my second degree is in consciousness, spirituality and transpersonal psychology. Okay, so as I say, I like to absorb information and absorb knowledge, always have done and always will do. So, and then I like to be able to explain that to you. So my view of what the double self is a way of looking at something, okay? It's not the way, so don't get wrapped up in this idea of, oh, well, this must be the way of looking at something. You take what makes sense to you and you put aside the rest, okay? You'll hear what makes sense to you and then put aside to one side what you think, I'm not sure about that, or maybe I need to go back through this. Certainly, you will have, for a period of time, access to the replays. So by all means, you will be able to then, because you're registered for this event, you'll be able to go back over it, any bits and pieces that you think, oh, I'd quite like to go through that again, okay? I'm no expert in quantum physics, okay? But I can make it simple to understand, especially in the context of an intuitive sensitive person, which is what you are. This is a good picture of looking at, this is what is going on for all of us as an intuitive sensitive. You are, so it's not just me who absorbs information and knowledge and feeds it back to you in terms of interpretation. You are absorbing knowledge, you want something different in your life, you want expansion, but you can't quite figure what that means. You're fearful in life, but at the same time, so it works in two ways. You're fearful, but also fearless. So what does that mean? What does that mean in your life? How can you be both? Well, you'll certainly know more of who you are by the end of this session. So what is the double self and why would you want it? Why would you want it? in your life? And certainly, some of the questions I've got through already from members say, well, what is this? How does the double self work? How does it feature in my life, and how do I gain any kind of connection with it? Certainly what I've got here is in terms of question from Monique is I don't get how I can make the connection with the double self. Well, what I'm telling you is by the end of this session, you will really have a sound understanding of what that is and how it features in your life. Okay, so what is the double self, and why would you want it? Why would you want this? What has it got to do with anything in your life? Why would you want it when you've already got so many things going on in your life, and actually you've tried and you tried and you try really hard, yet at the same time nothing seems to go right, things seem a bit stuck? And do you really have this double self that is at all in the least bit helpful? Because quite honestly, in my life now, I'm feeling that it's not. Okay, so if that's going on in your mind, let's have a look and see what the double self is and why you'd want it. Okay, so imagine that there are two versions of you. Okay, imagine there's two versions. One version is asleep. So one version is the asleep version of who you are. Version 2 is the awake version of who you are. So imagine that there are two versions. One version is asleep and one version is wide awake. The asleep version is fearful, it can't change, and it's full of anxiety. Okay, these are the emotions of your sleep self, but in other people you see this all the time. So in your particular sleep self as sensitive, this is how it will materialize in your life. So these are the times where you feel fearful, you can't change, when you think, oh, I really want to change this, really want to change this thing going on in my life, and why do I still feel this level of anxiety? Okay, so these are the emotions of your asleep self, but in other people you see these all the time. Their fear shows up in other ways. So their fear shows up as angry, okay, resentful, blames others, and their asleep self will always be that, precisely that, asleep. And so you could have two different layers of the asleep self. So you could say yours is fearful, can't change, and struggles with anxiety. Other people's kind of goes down into almost a rotten position where their sleep self is angry, resentful, blames others, and it will always be that. And you know people in your life who do that, or you have known people in your life who do that, and perhaps now you keep well away from them. But that is a reflection of the asleep self. Now the awake version, what is the awake version? Well, the awake version is fearless, doesn't need to control outcomes, and it's adventurous. Okay, so these parts of ourselves are adventurous too. So imagine, or you imagine this one, or you have fleeting glimpses of it and you want it as your everyday reality. What would life be like if you weren't scared? Often you don't know what it is sometimes that you're actually scared of. So the double self. The double self is the interpreter between the two, okay? Between the two versions, so between the asleep self and the awake self. Its job, what is its job? To solve the challenges between the two. So the double self's job is to solve the challenges between the two versions of you, the asleep self and the awake self. For instance, what's the point of life challenges? What is the point of life challenges? Why do we have them turfing up in our life? They hold us up. They take a lot of time sometimes to resolve, and sometimes we find that they're tricky too, and they follow us around or they resurface. So what's the point to them? The point of them is to propel you to the awake state. So the point of the life challenges, so remember that if there's one piece of information that you take from this session, remember when you have a life challenge that comes up, what's the point? What is the point? The point is to help propel you to the awake state. If you think about it, this is why you're on this session. Why are you on this session? Okay. Why are you interested in awakening or the awake self, or discovering more about yourself? Well, because you've had some kind of life challenge, or something in your life, or that something has occurred in your life in the past that has disillusioned you. Okay, put you into a position where you feel unsettled in life. That is part of that interpreter, the double self, saying, okay, a life challenge is here to propel you to that awake state, moving into that position of the fearless self. Your perception is there must be miles, okay? There must be miles between the asleep and the awake state. No doubt you're sitting there right now thinking, oh, God, how long do I have to wait for this awake state? I must be miles from it. I feel like I'm miles from this place of not feeling whole, or feeling that I'm scared or anxious, or that there's pain constantly pounding through me, as I'm looking at here as far as Beth is concerned, saying there's two parts of me battling with each other. Pain in my right side. Is this my double self trying to speak? Is it something in me that's trying to speak? And, when we have these kind of life situations, it feels sometimes that we're miles away from being in that awake position. Okay? The truth is, there is no distance between awake and asleep. So I'm going to explain that, because distance does not exist. Oh, you think, oh, yes it does. It exists in my life. So how does that work? How does that work in your life? Well, to give you an example, prior to the 1980s, and I mean not 1880s, 1980s, Einstein was right. How was he right? Nothing could travel faster than the speed of light. And that rule still exists for physical objects, okay? That still exists in life for physical objects. Nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. But a small experiment in the 1980s with Professor Alan Aspect, what did he discover? What did this experiment discover? It discovered that two subatomic particles could communicate regardless of distance. What are particles? Well, everything is made up of particles. Everything in life, everything physical, everything non-physical is made up of particles. Okay, so two subatomic particles could communicate regardless of distance. So how does that happen if nothing can travel faster than the speed of light? It could only happen if nothing actually travels across speed and time. And you're thinking right now, not sure how that works, because of course things must actually travel across speed and time. Well, according to the physicist David Bohm, what actually happens is nothing travels over space and time. How? Surely that's conflicting. Surely nothing is faster than the speed of light. Einstein's theory, which is what everyone goes by in terms of the world today, the materialist world today, nothing is faster than that. So how come you're saying, Heidi, that nothing travels over space and time? David Bohm's secret, as far as that was concerned, and his theory, was that the particles actually were never separated. Okay, the particles were never separated. All of the information is contained within each particle. What does that mean? It means that all the information of the universe is contained in one particle. Okay, one particle. All the information of the universe is contained in one particle. So, again, what does that mean? All of life is about revealing what is already there. So if all of the information of the universe is actually contained in one particle, okay? It's actually contained in one particle. It means that all of life is about revealing what is already there. Hence, as an example, the law of attraction is all about revealing what's right in front of you. Okay, and you're thinking, well, what's right in front of me doesn't look savory to me. It looks ugly. It doesn't look very nice to me. It doesn't feel very nice. Another question here, Nicola is saying that she's been feeling fine, and then a sudden panic about filling her time or filling her life with things, and saying, well, is there any insight into that? How does that operate? Well, right now you may be thinking, well, okay, well, how is that law of attraction all about revealing what's right in front of you? How can something be that you really want and it's not right in front of you? In fact, the opposite is true. Well, the issue is, the big but in here is where that is out of sync. It's because you're not yet aligned to see it. Simple as that. It's not something that you're having to go and get. It just simply means that you are not yet aligned to see it. So how do you align? That's what we want to know, isn't it? Okay, that's what we want to know. We want to know how can you be aligned to it? Can you guess how? The way is in the title of this masterclass. Okay, that's right. It's via the double self. So, secret number 2 to expanding consciousness through the double self. How do you start to access it? Okay, how do you start to get into this? How do you start to access it? Well, Bernardo Kastrup describes the universe. I'm using his example because I think this really relates to how you see things and to how to an accurate perception, in my view, of how you can put this all together in your mind to give you a view of what the double self really is. Okay, so Bernardo Kastrup describes the universe as, I think this is a really good way of looking at it, is the mind at large. Okay, so you think, the universe is the mind at large. So it's my mind at large, my mind in this magnified way, my mind extended. That's the universe. Is it? How does that work? Well, when the universe, okay, so aspects of the universe is literally put under the microscope and magnified millions of times. Okay, when it is literally done, looking out from those very elaborate telescopes, etc., what does it actually look like? What is it made up of? What's the universe actually made up of? So when it's put under that microscope and magnified millions, if not billions of times, what does it look like? Can you guess what it looks like? Have a think for a minute. You think, whoa, I don't know. What does it look like? Does it look like a mini-me? Does it look like a person? What are you talking about? I don't know. What does it look like? It looks identical, okay? Identical to a giant nervous system. Oh, okay. Which means the universe's nervous system matches yours. The body, therefore, is self-reflective of the universe. And bear in mind that for you as a sensitive, you are highly linked into this, okay? Because your system is that nervous system, okay? Why do you see things more elaborately? Why do you see things in a position of, from an intuitive mind, or that you have access to it? Why do you feel things through your body? Why do you sense things before they happen? Well, if the mind at large is really, so the universe is really a giant nervous system in terms of what it looks like under a microscope. We're looking at it from this position, okay? So Kastrup says the mind at large has 2 avenues of care. Okay, there's 2 avenues of care and how this looks. Physical and psychosomatic. So before you think, well, psychosomatic, doesn't that mean when you kind of magnify emotions that aren't really there? Heidi, isn't that what that means? No, not in this instance. Okay, so there's two components, physical and psychosomatic. So in other words, what is the universe made up of? It's both physical and emotional. You know, as a person, that's exactly what happens in your world. You are both physical and emotional. And you know that most people are meant to be both physical and emotional, but I'm sure you know a fair few people who don't really know the emotional component. Okay, so really what you're saying is that person doesn't know the universe's nervous system, because they can't identify with their own. So in other words, the universe is physical and psychosomatic, which means it's both physical and emotional. Okay, therefore the entire workings of the universe is both physical and emotional. So within the self, the mind at large exists within. Okay, it exists within you. It exists within your very framework. The physical, what do I mean by that? Well, it's the physical interaction. Okay, so it's physical interaction we have with things, drugs, surgery, physiotherapy, all of those in terms of the health of a system and how it will respond to things. There's meaning how we respond to physical elements when treating something, which is the mental processes of the mind at large. Okay, so it's the mental processes of this big old mind at large. So it's the physical component. Okay, we understand that physical interaction with things, physical interaction with people. If our health's out of sync, sometimes drugs work, sometimes surgery works, sometimes things like physiotherapy works. Okay, the emotional, how it's termed as psychosomatic. So how does something help? So again, within the universe and how we communicate within things, and the universe communicates. This is how we see things in terms of the emotional. So talk therapy, meditation. Now, this is why I keep going on at you, bing bang bosh, about meditation and why it's so important, because it links you with that universal nervous system. Okay, and gives you that capability of adjusting and making a huge difference in how you're able to see things and adjust things, and the communication between the emotional and the physical body. Okay, and the emotional and physical body within yourself, but also within the universe. Okay, so the universal mind, the mind at large. So the emotional is psychosomatic elements, talk therapy, meditation, visualization. They all work as part of that communication. Now, this is being seen more and more in the scientific community. Okay, I can't deny this. There's been this debate over, what is consciousness? How does it exist? How does it actually be something into this world? How can we can't make sense of everything as physical? Okay, which lots of people from the materialist thinking kind of way of looking at life, that everything must be physical, it must be some kind of physical explanation. Well, that's because the components of they're missing out on the other component of how the universe works. Okay, and so this is why, again, at the same time, it's really important that you don't, or you steer away, or why it doesn't work if you reject the physical component of who you are. So the emotional part, psychosomatic, and how it responds is, what does it actually mean? It means the subconscious mental processes of the mind at large. So the universe is the mind at large. So the double self is the go-between these two elements. Okay, the double self is the go-between between the physical and the emotional. That is what the double self is. It's the go-between between the two. It interprets the energy of both. So in other words, you and the universe cannot have full health, so to speak, without the physical and the psychosomatic. Why? Because the whole universe is a living nervous system. That's what it is. It's a living nervous system. You think, well, how does it work? It's a living nervous system. You're a living nervous system. That is what the universe is. And for you as a sensitive, you are tuned in to that living nervous system. But it may well be that your perspective of it needs adjustment, and that is what the double self is there for. The double self is the go-between these two elements of the self. So you are completely tapped into both systems, okay, both the physical and the emotional, because you live through the nervous system as a sensitive, okay, and you always have done. You've always lived through that as a sensitive person. You've born with that sensitive connection to all of that. This is why you have a fascination with deeper aspects of life, why you want more of a connection to things in life, to the universal flow, to people, a deeper sense of meaning, because you're alive with this. You are completely tapped into it. So the quality of your experience in life in terms of this connection between the two is determined by version 1, the asleep self, okay, and version 2, the awake self, okay. So the double self harmonizes the two working together. So these two components of who you are, double self harmonizes these two parts of you working together. So you could say the physical is the asleep, and the psychosomatic, as in the emotional part, the sensitive part, the nervous system, is the awake. Okay, so that's how you could look at it. You could say that the physical is the asleep version of you, and the sensitive part, the nervous system, is the awake. Because obviously the physical is physical, and that nervous system energy is an energy. It doesn't feel quite so physical and tangible, but it's the awake self. It will reflects that part of you. So, moving on to secret number 3, the connection between the two. Okay, so the connection between the two, the connection between the asleep and the awake, in terms of between the physical and the psychosomatic, and the physical and the emotion. What is this connection between the two? The connection between the two is one area. It's the pineal gland. Now, I'm sure you've heard of that before, but perhaps in a different context. So what is the pineal gland? It's the only part of the brain, only part, that is not mirrored. Okay, so the only part of the brain that is not mirrored is the pineal gland. As an example, okay, so how does that work? Well, you've got a left and right hemisphere. Everybody has a left and right hemisphere. Now, some people might think that maybe there's different parts of the brain in either side, the left and the right hemisphere, that there's different bits, or there's different parts of that, or it only exists in one part that's in the right, doesn't exist in the left. No, it's a complete mirror. The brain is a complete mirror on either side. We have two of each, in the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere. And there's these connections, so these nervous system connections that pass between, and electrical wires, for ways of explaining it, but that pass between these two hemispheres in the brain. So we have two of everything in there. And the only thing that we don't have two of is the pineal gland. It stands alone. So little is known about the pineal, okay, even though, we've been around for a long, long time. Humans through history have been around for a long time, and over, in the last century, we've become to know a lot of things about how everything works, how the brain works, and how information comes to light. But still, at the same time, little is known about the pineal and what it actually does. And it has actually been described through the ages as the secret of the soul, okay? The seat of the soul. So not only the secret of the soul, the seat of the soul. How the soul operates, how it's there through the pineal. This has been looked at or seen through thousands of years, as this has been this position of what the pineal actually does. It's also termed as the third eye. So the saying of, well, it's the third eye, what is it? Well, you're actually saying is it's energy passing through the pineal gland. We only have one in the brain. Only thing that we have one of. From the physical, the only thing that is known about the pineal is from the physical, that it regulates, from the physical perspective, it regulates our melatonin levels, okay? In other words, our sleep cycles. Oh, okay. So this is the only thing that's known about what the pineal actually does, that it produces melatonin, it regulates it. So that controls our sleep cycles and our awake cycles. So that is what is known about the pineal, is from a physical perspective. So from the emotional perspective, through thousands of years, it's been seen as the thing that reflects the seat of the soul. It's been termed as the third eye. It's been termed as the second sight, okay, the source of the second sight. In a physical perspective, so from the physical world, what does it actually do? It regulates our melatonin cycles, okay? What is melatonin about? Our sleep and our awake cycles. So how do we access the awake self within this? How do we access it? Through this little gland. Okay? This is how it shows in our life. Through this little gland. And through this lens within the self, we can see our whole universe and our life perspective. When it's in perspective, there is no fear, there is no there is no anxiety rather, and there is an access to all of life. So when we look at, well, how do I gain access? So to answer the question, so Monique's question, I don't get how I can make connection with the double self. Well, the connection comes through this little gland within our own system. It's the connection between this asleep and awake self. And the journey through that is this aspect that we would call the double self. So the double self is the interpreter of that information. Because what happens in life is the asleep self has to go to the awake. Hence the reason why we have challenges in life. This is the reason why we have challenges in life, because the asleep self has to go to the awake self. The awake self is not coming to the asleep self. You already know that because there's no rescuer in life, okay? You may have sat there and wondered, and maybe you have done for years, waiting for this rescuer in life, waiting for this thing to come and get you, or this person to come and get you and look after you and take care of you. It's not coming. Okay, I'll tell you that now. It's not coming. That person doesn't exist. And in hoping for their existence, they will only ever let you down because they're human. They're human. And people are not perfect. Okay? They're not perfect. But how do we rectify that within our own world, within our own movement in life? We move from the asleep self into the awake. As I said earlier, you may have had glimpses of this. You may have had little traipsing throughs, a little bit of an awareness of this, or you've passed into it, lost confidence and slipped back into the asleep self. But the life challenge keeps popping back up to propel you, to push you, to hand you over to yourself in terms of the awake self. Okay? So when we see through this lens within the self, we can see our whole universe and our life in perspective. Hopefully, if you've been feeling that your sensitivity is some kind of bugbear, something that you don't want in your life, hopefully you just clicked in your head and gone, wow, I don't want to give this up. I have this whole amazing nervous system of connection to life. I just need to adjust my perspective and my lens of which I see it through. And this part of me, this double self, can help me do that because it's the interpreter between the two. It carries more density than the awake self, but not the density of the sleep self, so the physical, okay? And as I say, when it's in perspective, there is no fear, there's no anxiety, and there's access to all of life because we see things only from this expanded awareness. So now I have a very important question to ask you. Are you ready to work with your double self, okay, to access freedom from anxiety and to unleash the law of attraction? So, are you ready to give up underestimating yourself and move from that position within your system of feeling a lack of well-being into a position of well-being, even if life isn't going 100% swimmingly? Because we will always have life challenges. We will always have things that show up in our life because they're there to propel us further into the awake state. It's not a case of, oh, I'm awake now and this is fine and dandy and there's nothing else more to learn, so I can sit down and roll back and go, well, I've got the answer to everything. I certainly don't have the answer to everything, but what I can tell you from the deepening experience of the awake self, you thrive in challenge. Okay, you're able to not just survive, to actually take that challenge as an expression, a deeper expression of moving you more to the position of your awake self. If that is the case, then absolutely. I have something for you, which is meeting the double self to resolve fear and access freedom. Now, this is a short deep dive course. It's a short course, so there's no excuses. No excuses. Oh, I haven't got time. It's a short course. It's a short deep dive, and I'm talking deep dive with 2 very powerful meditations. Now, normally my short courses only have 1 meditation that goes with them. This one has 2 powerful meditations because I believe that this is necessary part of the process of you getting in to further access into utilizing the double self for your own sense of inner freedom. So what we have touched on is only the tip, okay? It's the tip of a deeper way of going into the double self and your understanding of it. And the only way to do that, really, in all honesty, is the experience of, okay? Because, as I've said to you, through this process, it's 2 parts to it. It's 2 parts of the universe. There's both physical and there's the psychosomatic, there's the emotional component. So when we're talking about our health, our physical and emotional health, they are deeply, deeply linked, okay? One does not flourish without the other. If we look at the universe as a giant nervous system, we're talking about one flourishes with the other. Okay, so if one's out of balance, then the other feels out of balance. And it's reflected, and you could say that it's reflected through the collective. So we'll call the collective consciousness as being that big old giant nervous system. So what is the course? Okay, so video 1 looks at what is the double self and how it communicates. Okay, how it communicates. The meditation is to look at the plans of the double self, as in your double self, what your plans of the double self is. Those parts that are of your world that are not yet conscious. Part 2 is, video number 2 is the expansion component, using the double self to face fear. The meditation is the meditation for the double self to take you to the edge of fear. To why? Why would you want to take you to the edge of fear? To see your expansion. Now, I would say that within this presentation, there was plenty of things within it that you could take away and say to yourself, right, okay, I've learned quite a lot about this idea of the double self. I think I need to get my head around it. How do I get my head around it? You can try and understand it logically, or you can actually go deep into the experience of it, okay? Because life is about experience. Life is about experiencing things, not only in the physical world, but also in the emotional world. So if you want deep expansion, you have to go in to that exploration of the emotional world. So secret number 1, what did we look at? So this is to refresh what we looked at. So secret number 1, we looked at how distance does not exist. Okay, all information is contained in the one particle. Therefore, the law of attraction is all about revealing what's in front of you and aligning to see it. It's not about going to get it, that it's already there, it's already in front of you, that the whole of the universe actually exists in one particle. And if you think, well, how does that work? How does that work? Well, you could go into a whole other area of deep awareness as far as that's concerned, and you could go into a deeper aspect of quantum physics, and you can look at the universe, and there's so much evidence to say it is, but it's too confusing for people that it's actually a hologram. So we are kind of like a holographic image of how everything works, but I'm not going to go into that because that gets way too complicated. So in secret number 1, we looked at how distance does not exist. That everything actually exists in the same space. So wanting that area of deep expansion, most people think that you have to go look for it. You have to go and find something that you haven't already got, but it's already there. Okay, all the information is contained in the one particle. Therefore, all those positive things of the law of attraction is all about revealing what's in front of you and aligning to see it. In part 2 of this presentation, we looked at secret number 2, which was how expanding consciousness through the double self, which happens through what Kastrup describes as the mind at large. In other ways, we describe it as a universal mind, deeper awareness, the superconscious, whatever word you want to match to it. What is it? Well, when the universe is looked at under the most sophisticated microscopes, what does it look like? What is it made up of? It looks exactly the same as a nervous system. So it is the giant nervous system, which links the physical and the emotional self. The universe is both the universe, remember, not just us as physical beings. The universe is both physical and emotional. We looked at how it is both asleep and awake, and we have these two parts within ourselves. Part 3 of this presentation, we looked at the connection between the two parts of the universe and how it happens through the pineal, the only part of the brain that isn't mirrored. How the pineal is only known in terms of its physical component for its power to make us asleep or awake through the production of melatonin, and the link of the double self as the interpreter. And through that, you see the whole universe in perspective. Once it's in perspective, there is no fear, no anxiety, and you have access to all of life. Another question I got on here, which is Helena saying things like, saying in her question, I had 3 loud people around me today talking rubbish. This isn't a coincidence. What's happening? So 3 people close in my life experience talking very loudly, talking rubbish next to me. What is it? What does it mean, Heidi? How do I understand it? Well, again, this is an example of the double self in terms of the interpretation, the communication, beginnings of that levels of communication, but not understanding it, not seeing what's right in front of you. It's an interpretation of what it's trying to say is your mind is too full, because the description here, and I'm using the word specifically that Helena has used in her wording, which is 3 loud people talking rubbish right next to me. This isn't a coincidence. Well, it's a reflection of what your head's been doing. So what it's about is looking at what is going on in my mind right now, which is talking rubbish. Okay? And that sign, that challenge in life is to then show it to you in the external world. So in the physical world, and to give you 3 people talking to you, talking around you, total rubbish. So instead of it being a reflection of the external world, it's then about interpreting it in the internal world and saying, what rubbish is my head telling me right now? What rubbish has it been telling me for the last few days? But when we can't see from a position of the awake self, you wouldn't even think to see it that way. Okay, you wouldn't even think to be able to look at it from that particular perspective. Those are when those things come up in our life.